Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Amber Hines, and I'm the owner of Ashbur, where we specialize in short-term Medicaid compliant annuities. I'm super excited this morning to have Attorney Todd Whatley with us today to present on understanding the Medicaid application process for long-term care. Sorry, we're a little bit late. We were having some technical difficulties, but hopefully we have that all figured out. Todd has been an elder law attorney for over 25 years and really was in the practice when a lot of other attorneys didn't even know that elder law existed. He's done over 5,000 Medicaid applications within his office. And so I'm very excited about having Todd with us today to present on this topic. Go ahead, Todd.
Okay. Hey, Amber, thank you very much. Yeah, this is one of my passions, and it's just absolutely something that I love to do. And I love crisis Medicaid planning. And I guess the culmination, what we're talking about today is the culmination of a lot of work. Okay. You've marketed and someone learned about your business. They came in, they said, we have a loved one going into the nursing home. And you came up with a plan and sold that plan, and you've now worked the plan, and now it's time to get this through the state. And the picture that I chose here was kind of like the murky, scary looking trail, because this can be surprising, and it is dealing with the government, and that can sometimes be very challenging. And we'll get to this later on, but I am also a coach for attorneys who want to do elder law, and it's always interesting. The first application is always very intense and scary, and it's like, it's going to be okay. Okay, we can do this. But there's some things that I think through this presentation today, I'm going to be able to help you fix some things up front, get those things in place up front, know what to expect, particularly if you've never done a Medicaid application. This is going to be great for you. And even if you've done one, I still get phone calls from attorneys all over the place that ask me about, what should I do? How should I do this? This is happening, that's happening. So I think even if you've done quite a few applications, you're going to learn something today. So this is an overview of the Medicaid application process. All right, who am I? I am Todd Whatley. I am a certified elder law attorney. I also have my LLM in elder law, 25 years of experience. I've done, Amber said 5,000, and that's probably correct. I normally put on paper 3,000 because I can pretty much prove that, but I've been doing this 25 years, and if you do the math, it's a bunch, okay? I don't think you need to know much more about me than that. I've been there, I've done that, I've made every mistake that you can imagine, and hopefully I'll help you avoid some of that. So the key topics we're going to cover are, very briefly, the eligibility requirements. You should know if someone is qualified before you apply, the application steps, and some very common challenges that occur throughout this process. And I want you to understand why this is so important. And this is probably the most stress-inducing process in our office. I love elder law because it is generally a very calm, low stress type situation. You're meeting with families, solving problems. It's a great job. But when you do that application, it's you versus the state, and sometimes those caseworkers can be extremely challenging, and it can be very stress inducing. And I want to help you do this the best way possible. So my goal is, by the end of this presentation, you will have a comprehensive understanding of the Medicaid application process and be better equipped to navigate the complexities of long-term care planning. All right, so let's jump into it. Very quickly, what is long-term care? Okay, that is paying for what Medicaid will pay for in your state. Okay, and let's address that sometimes. Medicaid covers nursing homes. Okay, that's what they do. If a nursing home takes Medicaid, there are in some states. I'm very lucky. I practice primarily in Arkansas, and every nursing home takes Medicaid. The good ones, the bad ones, the nice ones, the new ones, the old ones, they all take Medicaid. I also practice in Oklahoma, and that is not the case in Oklahoma. Not all states take Medicaid. And so also in Arkansas, we have a very robust assisted living Medicaid, and we also have home care Medicaid. So you may be called on to apply for Medicaid for any of those benefits, but primarily it's nursing home. And it is government benefits that help people pay for the care that they need. Every state and federal law obviously has eligibility criteria, and this is where this may change from state to state. Being a coach and working with people in all different states, I've learned a lot, but I can tell you the number one source for a whole lot of things in state variances is Amber. Okay. I think she's kind of proud of this before. I grade the CELA exam. When you want to become a CELA, you have to take a test, and I help grade that test. And there's been times when and we tell people don't put the state that you're practicing in just because it can hurt you, particularly if you're wrong. And I'll get some kind of, it's like in my state, blah, blah, we can do this or that or whatever and get someone qualified. And I'm like, God, that doesn't sound right. Well, I'll call Amber. I was like, hey, Amber, does any state let you do this? And she's like, yeah, Pennsylvania lets you do it. I was like, okay, did not know that. And so if you ever have questions, and particularly if you're working with someone from a different state, understand state rules are very different. And Amber's a great resource on that, and I'll help you out any way that I can. Okay. There are asset and income limits. Obviously, you've got to meet those guidelines. You have to know those extremely well. And in your planning, you've got to get them within those limits. And that's the whole planning process before you do the application. This goes back to what I just talked about. Long-term care services covered. It depends on your state. Each state is different. In Arkansas, nursing home, assisted living, home care. It's pretty robust. In Oklahoma, home care is practically non-existent. Very few assisted livings take it, and not even all nursing homes take it. So the application process, it can be complex. Okay, there are a lot of requirements, and there's a lot of things that just don't make sense. I threatened to fire a client this past week because she was just being ridiculous and not doing what we ask. It's like, I know this seems unreasonable to you, but this is what the state requires. You've got to get us all the information that we need. We need all pages of the bank statement, not just what you think are the important ones. It's just crazy things, and I'll go through some of those as we do this. All right, step-by-step process. Let's get this down. And so this is after they've hired you, after you've done the planning, you've implemented the plan, and they are now within the income and the asset limits. So number one, you've got to gather documentation. And this is one of those things where I've learned from doing this for 25 years, and I'll say this quite a few times because this is probably the number one thing that people appreciate when they do their first application is get the documents ahead of time. I have a checklist. If you want it, please email me or Trisha, and I will give you that email address at the end. Email us. We will send you our document checklist. And I think it's pretty good for all states. There may be a few things on there that you need, or there may not be some things, but it's a pretty good list of, and I give this to clients. I give them the document checklist early in the process, even in the initial visit, and they don't even hire me. My document checklist has my logo at the top, name, phone number. It's kind of a marketing tool, but if someone comes to me and it's like, hey, we're thinking about putting mom into the nursing home, we go through this, I'll look at their assets, kind of do that initial meeting, and I'm like, hey, this will help you. If you do apply, you're going to need all of these documents. It does two things. Number one, it gets my name in front of them so that they can see, oh yeah, I need to call Todd, hopefully. And number two, the document list is pretty intimidating. It's a lot of different documents, and they get this, and it's 2 pages long of all these documents they need. It instills in them how important this is and how complex this can be, and may persuade them to think, rather than thinking, I can probably do this myself, just looking at the document checklist tells them, good Lord, this is a lot of stuff and it's very complex. And so I will be glad to share that checklist with you. It's pretty good. So the reason I say get it beforehand, once you apply, there's a process where the caseworker looks at everything and says, oh, we're missing this and this and this. They then send you a notice to say, and we call it a RFI, request for information. So the RFI comes in and there's a deadline. Our deadline in Arkansas is 10 days, not business days, days. And if they send it at 4:30 on Friday and we may not see it until Monday morning, we've just lost Friday because they sent it on Friday. That's one of the days, Saturday and Sunday. And so we're now at 6 or 7 days to gather this information. And it can be very stressful to the client, to us, to everybody to have to get those documents beforehand. There are some situations where you want to send in an application as quick as possible. And I won't go into those details, but primarily it's a married case that they've been qualified for a few months and you want to catch the previous 90 days, which you can. If they were qualified 90 days ago, they will only go back 90 days. So therefore, sometimes you do want to send in an application as quick as possible. We can't gather documents. We do that, but I hate those because we tell the family, you've got to get on this real quick because the caseworker is going to call us back and say, you have 10 days to get all these documents. So start now, go get these documents, take this checklist with you, okay? So we do that very rarely. We try our best from day one, start bringing us documents, bring those things in, let us get it in our system, let us look at it at a very leisurely fashion so that by the time the application goes in, there's very few things, if anything, missing, okay? So documentation gathering is probably one of the most time-consuming things you can do. Then you do the application, all right? A lot of states have gone to electronic online applications. Kind of good, kind of bad. Arkansas went through this and had a huge problem. They went back and forth to say, stop using the system, fax everything to us or email it to, okay, now use it. Well, crud, it's not working again. Let's go. It was just a nightmare. But I think a lot of states have now gone to an online system. And so you've got to go through that. And I can't tell you what to expect other than just answer all the questions, get the information in, upload the documents through their system. We personally don't upload through their system because it's so slow. We fax everything in. Yes, fax. So we have an online fax provider and we just put it all in a orderly fashion and fax it to them with a cover letter to say, here's the application on this person. Here's basically what's going on. Please get to this as soon as possible. When you first start, I've noticed I haven't done an interview in years. But when I first started, one of the processes was once the application comes in, the caseworker will look through it and then schedule a telephone interview, which shouldn't be that scary. It's a great way for you to introduce yourself. If this is the first application that you've done, you can introduce yourself, your firm. This is what we do. You'll probably be seeing a lot of these from us over the next years. And it's a great way to hopefully start off on a good foot and try to be their friend. But they're going to go through the application and talk about different things. And this is your opportunity. I still recommend the cover letter that explains everything. And particularly since we don't do interviews anymore, then the cover letter's critically important. But even if you do the interview, I would suggest you still do the cover letter to explain to them, hey, there was gifting. Um, we have a disabled child, so we've given things to them, just kind of help them look at this application as a fresh piece of paper so that they can know what's going on with this real family that you're working with. So the interview process generally doesn't take long. They just want to clarify some questions and maybe let you know, here's how this process will go. I don't mind them and kind of miss doing them, but just be prepared for a phone interview. Okay. So now the process starts back and forth. They're looking at stuff. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to send you the RFI, the request for information to supplement. They're going to want updated documents. Typically, the date of application, you're not going to have bank statements that cover that day. And so you'll want to get a printout from the bank to show, hey, we were qualified. We put enough money into this annuity to get them down below. Here's the snapshot amount from 4 months ago. Here's where we are today. That's with a printout from the bank, which typically doesn't work. They want a bank statement. And so a few weeks later, they'll say, okay, we need that bank statement covering the application date. And it's just back and forth and back and forth. And hopefully you can answer all their questions, prove everything that you've done, and then they get, hopefully, an approval. DHS calls you back and says, hey, this case has been approved. And here's your start date. Here's how much they're going to pay to the nursing home. It just has all of that information in there, and you're approved. Ta-da! But it's not over. Okay. All states have an ongoing renewal process. In Arkansas, it's about every year. We've gotten some 3 months later. We just got the approval. We're like, okay, we're good for a year. And then 3 months later, they're like, hey, we're like, I thought we're supposed to wait a year. And I don't know what the process is, but it almost always is typically a year later. They would just want to see if the person is still qualified. Practice pointer real quick. At that point, from the date of application, if you're dealing with a married couple, from the date of application, when you do the spin down and split, they are separated financially. Okay. And so my recommendation is on that annual review, you're only sending in what has the applicants or the Medicaid recipients information. And through this time period, from the date of application, the applicant, if they're married, can have their name on more than, say, $2,000. That's our limit. So they could have an IRA. So it's November and you're doing this application. Part of your spin down was to cash in, say, half of her IRA so that you didn't have the big, huge tax hit. It's okay for her to have $10, $15, $20,000 in an IRA that's only in her name when she's applying, but within a year, you have to get her name off of that. And so you wait till January, cash in the other half and pay less taxes. So you can apply with more than 2,000, but at the 1 year point, they cannot have their name on more than $2,000. And I would put this in writing to the family as part of your approval process. Hey, they're approved and her name was on more than $2,000 at the time of application. Within the next year, you have to get her name off of that. We've had a case recently where that letter did not go out. The family didn't do it. And we had a case where her name was on more than $2,000 and she was denied. It was kind of tense between us and the family. We got it fixed, but it caused unnecessary stress and problems. Had we sent out the letter to say, get her name off of these accounts, she cannot have her name on more than $2,000. that process, the annual process, I charge for it. You don't have to, but I think once they get a final decision back from the state, this case is over with, and you're not obligated to do that. If you tell them, hey, there will be an annual renewal, you're not obligated, but if you want us to do it, we charge $750. Okay, and it's basically gathering three months worth of bank statements up to the 1 year point and just proving that she's still under the limit. Okay, all right, next slide. Okay, so don't forget, okay, and this is one of the things that sometimes we miss. We don't have anything, as attorneys, we don't have anything to do with medical necessity. We can't prove that. The nursing home, assisted living, home care agency, they will prove that. But don't forget about that, okay? Medicaid is not going to pay for a nursing home if the person doesn't need to be there. Now, who goes to a nursing home if they don't need to? Well, I've seen it a lot of times where in assisted living, like in Arkansas, Medicaid pays for some assisted living, but not all. And so they're in this really nice assisted living and they basically run out of money and they're like, I got to go somewhere where Medicaid's going to pay. So they go to the nursing home. They don't medically need to be there, and that can be a problem. And so and it's rarely an issue that we deal with, but just keep in the back of your mind somewhere that this person has to qualify medically. They can't just wake up one day and go to the nursing home and decide to live there because Medicaid's going to pay for it. They have to qualify. But just know that and make sure that you've got the paperwork showing that they are medically qualified, and also residency and citizenship. One interesting thing that I think applies to all states, to be a resident of a state, you typically have to do certain things in order to be a resident. In Medicaid, I live very close to the western side of Arkansas, right next to Oklahoma. And we have people from Oklahoma come into Arkansas nursing homes because they tend to be better. And people are like, well, she's never been to Arkansas. How is she going to qualify for Arkansas Medicaid? Once she goes into the nursing home and is admitted, that's her home. She now qualifies for that state's Medicaid program. It's kind of weird. Check with your state and make sure that's the case, but I can't imagine it would not be the case because they're there, they need help, and they'll pay for it. All right, next one. Challenges. Okay, I think I've spent quite a bit of time on documentation requirements. Understand, get the checklist, get the documents on the checklist, and be done with it. Okay. Spousal impoverishment. Okay, sorry about the spacing here between the two systems. It didn't work just great. You have to understand the spousal impoverishment rules. Here's a shocker. Caseworkers don't understand these rules sometimes. I can't tell you the number of times when we've had a couple case and they had over $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. We did the annuity. We got them down under the 154, 140, which is the current limit in most states. And we applied for Medicaid with the community spouse having $150,000 and everything else is in non-countable assets. And the caseworker's like, why did you apply for Medicaid when the husband has $150,000? I'm like, because he started at more than 300. What's that got to do with it? He has too much money. You're going to have to spend half of that. We're like, no, we don't. And so this is where you have to know the rules, okay? I tell my coaching clients, and this sounds nerdy, but I bet most don't do it, but I hope some at least get close to it. Read the rules front to back once a year for 5 years. Read the rules, know the rules. If you'll do that, you will know it better than the caseworker. And when a caseworker comes to you and says, you can't do that, you're like, yes, I can. Here's the policy. Here's where it says I can do this. And so just don't be thrown off guard more than you can be when the caseworker says, I don't know, what are you doing? Why? It's like, I know the rules. And every single time I'm like, their own form that they send out on spousal cases down at the bottom in fine print, it's like they get half. The minimum of 30,000, the max of 154, 140, and it tells them what to do. I'm like, have you ever looked at the fine print on your own form? They're like, no, I never seen that before. And you're just like, how many spousal cases have you worked with that were not represented by attorneys? It's just scary. So just know the rules and then stand up for your client. That's part of also navigating the application. Just know that you probably know this better than the caseworker. You're dealing typically with more complex cases that they may or may not have seen too many times, and just stand firm and know, I know this, and this is what we're doing, this is correct, and stand your ground, okay? Calculating countable assets. That is, you've got to be good at this. You've got to look at the assets and figure out what's countable, what's not countable, and how to convert the countable into non-countable. Okay. Check, double check, triple check your numbers, particularly on spousal cases. And practice pointer, when you're doing a spousal case, if your state's numbers, what the federal number is, 154, 140, don't get to 154, 139, okay? Don't push that limit. Overspend, and particularly if you're doing an annuity with Amber, put a little bit extra. I rarely let a married couple apply, even though they qualify for the 154. I don't let them put in the application. We don't put in the application until they're under 150, because that gives us $4,000 for market changes. We miss something that was worth 2,000 or 3,000. That gives you some cushion. So understand countable assets, and then don't push the limit on spousal cases. Timeliness, okay? You have to work on this case. When the caseworker sends back stuff, if you don't respond within their time limit, denial. And you're denied, and up to that point won't be paid for, okay? And that's where this gets expensive. This is where it gets extremely nerve-wracking, that the person in your office doing these applications, if it's you, hopefully not, hire someone who's really good with this and let you go do lawyer work, and they work with these cases. But just know, a mess up can be very expensive. If you miss that guideline by just not supplying it within the number of days, now you can possibly get an extension if you ask before it's over with, or call, beg, plead, do something, but hire a person who's good with deadlines and can get this done quickly. All right, next slide. I will also share my contract with you. If you want the contract for a crisis Medicaid case, I will share it with you, because in this contract, I tell them what to expect. I mentioned the 10-day deadline. I mentioned the importance of getting documents up front. I mentioned how this could be expensive. One thing I just put in about the last 3 months is, if we don't meet the financial deadline, say our number is $2,000. If you're not under $2,000 over something you did not tell us about, and if you tell us about it, we're going to deal with it. But if you forgot something, if for whatever reason, that's not our fault that you're over the limit, we have to do a brand new application, and we could lose all those days up to that point. When we discover this, we've got to do a new application, and I charge $1,500 for that, because it's more work on us, because we've got to redo everything, a new date, a new application, new documents. It's more work. And so in my contract, we will charge you $1,500 if you miss this dollar amount, and they initial by it. So it's like they do it, okay? Tell your clients to follow the instructions exactly. This is what I alluded to earlier, where I almost fired a client because our caseworkers want every single page of the bank statement. Well, you've seen bank statements, and there's what we call trash pages. It's advertisement or it's a blank page, this page intentionally left blank. Yeah, that has no information on it that the caseworker needs, but at the bottom, when it says this bank statement is one of 8 pages, if you don't supply all 8 pages, they're going to think you're hiding something. So we, in our instructions to the client, we need all pages of the bank statements. And this lady just got us what had the numbers on it. And we're like, no, we need more than this. And we're about to miss our deadline. And she just blew up on my caseworker and said all kinds of ugly things. And it's like, just do what we tell you, okay? Tell your clients some things we ask for seem very silly. Like, for instance, Social Security income. It's on the bank statements. It says it's from Social Security. It goes into the bank statement. Well, any common sense human being would say we can't monkey with that. That is money from Social Security directly going into this bank account. This proves how much her Social Security amount is. No, they want a letter from that end of year letter stating here's your Social Security, here is how much you're paying for Medicare and Part D and blah blah blah. They want it from the source. Same thing with any pension or any income, they basically want it from the source, not what hits the bank statement. People don't understand that, but if you tell them up front, hey, part of this checklist is letters from Social Security, letters from the VA stating what you're getting. Tell them up front and just make sure they understand. Long periods of delay. Sometimes in our cases, we can go 3 to 4 months and not hear back from the state. Now, practice pointer. Make sure your caseworker or you, if you're doing this, follow up with the state every 2 weeks. Okay, just on Mondays or Tuesdays, every 2 weeks, send an email. Hey, where are we on this case? Is there anything I've missed? What can I do to help you get this done? Email them, not a phone call, email so that you have proof, because what if they sent you an RFI and you missed it, you didn't get it, the mail lost it, whatever, you didn't respond because you didn't get it and your case has been denied and you don't even know it. Okay, they've done this without you even knowing that it happened. You won't know that unless you send in a letter. And I will tell you, in fair hearings where that's happened, we never got the notice and they denied it. But thankfully, every 2 weeks, we send in an email to say, hey, where are we? What's going on? And if they don't respond, that looks real good on you to say, there was no way I can know this. And I've actually reversed denials because of a failure to respond to an RFI that I never got, because we had emails showing that we checked every 2 weeks and the caseworker never told us it was denied. And so there can be long periods of delay, but that doesn't mean that you just sit back and do nothing. You have to stay on top of this case, and every 2 weeks send in an email to say, hey, haven't heard from you. What's going on this case? Okay. Tell the clients, don't talk to the state. I've had caseworkers call the client. Somehow we don't even put the client's phone number on the application anymore. It's our phone number, it's our address, everything comes to us, because the state will call and say, hey, you gave away money or you did this or that. Do you know that you can't do that? And clients call us all mad because obviously we're stupid because the state caseworker says you couldn't do that. And I'm like, yeah, we do it all the time. And it's just, don't talk to the state. You've hired us just like you would not talk to the other party in a lawsuit. Talk to us. Don't talk to the state. We'll talk to the state for you. And that's a sales point. When they hire you to do this, you're going to deal with the state, not them. People are afraid of the state. They're afraid of government. Okay, don't talk to them. When you hire me, I talk to them for you. You don't have to worry about it. Do not talk to the state. Okay. And then I always let them know, it's like, we're going to get through this. Okay. Because sometimes they're fatigued. And that's the deal with this lady. Just last week, I threatened to fire her, but she perked up and she said, Todd, it's been a really bad week with my mom. She's been calling me all hours of the day and night. She said, I can't get my work done. I'm always at the nursing. I am stressed. I am tired. I am stressed out. And I'm sorry that I took it out on Sarah. I said, okay. So just remind them this is going to be ugly. Okay. For the client, the most ugly part is up to the application, getting all those documents. Okay. That's when they do the most work, and tell them it won't always be this way. Once the application goes in, we're going to need a few things along the process, but that's where we get to work is we're dealing with the state for you. So we're going to get through this. Okay. Keep your temper down. Let's work together. We're here for you to get you through this process. Okay. It may not seem like it, and we may not hear from them for months, but we're there. Okay. Obviously, I can't get through this without talking about annuities. And one of the things is when you say, hey, we can protect a large sum of money by using a Medicaid qualified annuity in this application, the state allows it if it's done correctly. And I'll just tell you, I am not friends with a lot of Edward Jones, local people. Whoever your local financial advisor is, when you say, okay, we need to take this $600,000 and put it into annuity, they get excited. They're like, typical commission on a $600,000 annuity can easily be $20,000, $30,000. And so they're like, oh, I can do that. Nah, you can't. Oh yeah, I can do annuities. You're like, and I can generally get the Edward Jones guy or lady to back down, but it's the client. It's like, oh, we love our guy. We don't want to take business from him. And you try to tell them, look, this has got to be done exactly right. The commission on these is not much. And this is an irrevocable Medicaid qualifying annuity. If it is done incorrectly, we're stuck. Okay. And I tell you, almost everything I say, practice pointer or don't do this or don't do that, I've done it. Okay. I've made every mistake I think we can make. And I'm telling you, you have to do a cover letter. And I think I know I do. I know I have a cover letter. If you want that, I'll share it with you. To have your client sign off to say, look, I have a person. Her name is Amber. This is what she does for a living, is this particular annuity. She does it absolutely correctly. It's the right amount. It's done correctly. If you don't want to use her and you want to use your guy, you're going to sign this letter that says, it is not my fault. And do not talk to the Edward Jones guy, or do not give advice. Don't say, yeah, this looks good. Yeah, because it may not be good. You say to the Edward Jones person, here's the rules. If you think you can do it, I'll even give you the federal law to say what this annuity has to do. Once you think that's done, send it to me and I'll submit it to Medicaid. And I can almost guarantee you it's not going to be right. It's irrevocable. And by the time this annuity gets to the caseworker and the caseworker sends it up to legal, and legal spends, a few weeks looking at it, by the time you get this back, you could easily be 2 or 3 months into the application process. And they're like, nope, this is not a good annuity. This is a gift. This is a transfer for less than fair market value. You're denied. You've got 3 months of nursing home care. In Arkansas, that's pushing $10,000. That's a $30,000 uh-oh. And I'm telling you, that CYE letter is imperative that you have it and you use it. And a lot of times that letter alone will say, okay, you're serious about this. Maybe we should use your person. Okay. And I'm just telling you, it happens. They love their local guy, and the local guy thinks they can do it because they think they're going to make a ton of money off of it. And it can get very awkward. And I'm just telling you, in this application process, use Amber, let Amber do it. Do what you have to talk your people out of letting their local person do it, because they won't do it correctly. And a lot of times they don't even represent companies who do them. They try to monkey around and figure something out, and it's just a nightmare. And I just say, don't use it. Don't use your person. I have a person. She knows what she's doing. All right. Essential documentation. Again, like I hopefully you can see, since I'm bringing this up so many times, how stinking important it is. Proof of identity, okay, citizenship, income, assets from the source, okay, their living situation, medical expenses. Why do medical expenses matter? Well, that's what you're trying to get covered with Medicaid. And if your community spouse has exceptional expenses, not just medical, but living expenses and things like that, if your state doesn't grant the maximum minimum monthly maintenance needs allowance, MIMNA as it's typically called, if they don't grant the max, you start at the bottom. Those expenses help build that person up so they can get more income each month from the institutionalized spouse. You need driver's license, birth certificates, pay stubs, bank statements, property deeds, and again, medical bills. Okay. Gather this stuff into one place. We scan everything in, scan it into their file, and then there's some cool, and I'm not the one to give details on this, but there's some PDF software programs out there that will allow you to arrange PDFs in order. And so we try our best, we being Sarah, my person, she arranges everything like when the application asks for it, boom, that's number one. The second thing it asks for, that's number two. And so we do this one long PDF document supplemented with the application with a cover letter. So put it all in one so that they can go through and see, put the bank statements in chronological order by bank, make it as easy as possible on your caseworker, and they'll make it easier on you typically. Okay. The state agency, surprisingly, they have software out there that they will find assets. And this is where I say sometimes they'll find stuff. It's not the client's fault. It's not our fault. But sometimes they'll find life insurance policies. They'll find bank accounts, even closed bank accounts. And so tell your people, scour the house, do your very best to find everything, because if you don't, the state will. And just know there's a big brother thing out there that they can find stuff that you may miss. All right, next. I think next month, if I remember right, I'm doing a presentation on fair hearings. And so I just wanted to bring this up real quick to say, sometimes you have to do a fair hearing. Sometimes you get denied unjustifiably. And we'll talk about the fair hearing process. It's court, okay? It's you doing your job as an attorney to represent your client. But a lot of times what you're defending is your work, is your idea, is your plan, for some reason got denied. And so honestly, you're in, it's like I'm defending me, although I say that I'm representing this person who's applied for Medicaid. I'm really representing me because this was my plan. This was my idea to do this or that or whatever, and they've denied it. So again, read your policy manual, start to finish, once a year for 5 years. I'll cover this in more detail. I wanted this slide there. If you do get a copy of the slides, you can look at this and have a pretty good idea, because sadly, appeals and fair hearings are part of the application process, but I will cover that more next month. All right, next. Best practices. You have to understand what you're doing. You have to know the rules better than the caseworker, which honestly is not hard, but just know it extremely well. Read the policy, I even say, here's the thing, print it out. Print it out so it's in a 3-ring binder, and you can go through with a highlighter and you can make notes and keep that, so that year 2, when you go through it, you're like, oh, I did a case on this very thing, and it will bring more, you'll know it better. It's like, oh yeah, we did a whole fair hearing on this very issue, and you read through it, it's like, okay, make notes, keep it kind of like your Bible. It's like, this is how I function, okay? Gather comprehensive documents, okay? be proactive with your clients and with DHS, okay? Communicate proactive, let them know what's coming. Don't just surprise them. Say, this is going to get ugly for the next month. You're going to have to gather a bunch of documents for me. We're going to go back and forth on some stuff. And even through this process, here's what to expect. And they'll take it a whole lot better if they were told beforehand rather than saying, oh yeah, we need this and this and this. Well, you never told me that. Well, I need it. It's ugly, okay? Obviously adhere by ethical guidelines. That just makes sense. Okay, let's do questions first, and then I want to talk real quick. I'm doing a big push on coaching, but do we have questions?
Yeah, Todd, I just had a question here because I know that some newer practitioners or solo practitioners will sometimes ask me about outsourcing the Medicaid application to another agency. Is that something that you have experience on or something that you can speak on?
Sure. I've had quite a few coaching people do that. I'm probably 50-50 on it. You know, as if you ask me, should you do it? You know, you're still responsible. Okay, you can say, hey, I'm gonna let this other company do it, but they're doing it under your license. And I think ethically, you are telling your client, I'm overseeing this. If you do the plan, you should do the application, either physically do it or supervise the people that are doing it for you. But I still think you're on the hook as the attorney for letting someone do that. And I know a lot of my coaching clients have had really good experience with that. And it is something that um, I know people who farm it out. I've never done it. Okay. I always have my in-house person so I can supervise it very closely. And I want to make sure that it's done absolutely correct. But I do know people who have farmed it out and they've had good experience in it. It is a time suck. I will tell you, it is, it is Sarah's full-time job basically doing applications. And we typically have somewhere between 4 and 15. I mean, 15 is about max, but it's almost always somewhere between 4 and 12 applications going on at the same time. And it's a full-time job for her to manage that few number of applications.
Okay. And then another question that comes up a lot is when we're dealing with married couples, usually if there's an annuity involved for the community spouse and the annuity income is going to force the spouse's assets over the $154,000 in assets, is that something that the state will try and challenge, or how do you usually deal with that?
Sure. No, they should not. Remember, at the date of application, when you apply, you're saying, hey, state, they've started out with this much money on the snapshot date. They're now at this amount. The community spouse gets to keep this under federal law. And this amount is now down below the state limit. My limit's 2,000. So at that point, if that is approved, if DHS says, yes, you did that correctly, she is now, say she is the one in the nursing home, she is now approved. They are financially separated. The husband could hit the lottery, but particularly when this annuity that can be a fairly substantial payment, $8, $10, $12, $15,000 per month, when it goes to him, he's probably not going to spend it. He's going to save it. And that's part of our sales pitch is, yeah, you've got $1 million. I can protect most of it. The way we do that is with this annuity that's going to pay you money, and so you can build up your savings again. The state should not look at that. And that's why I said, don't mess up the annual renewal. And it's a sales pitch also to the client to say, look, yeah, I charge $750, but I'm going to make sure the state gets exactly what they need and nothing else. And so you're supplying just the information on the institutionalized spouse showing, yeah, she's broke. Her income is going to the nursing home. Everything's good here. All right. You don't want to show his, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 bank account because they will probably inquire about it. And They shouldn't, but they could. Just don't give it to them. Just hang on to it. Give them exactly what the law says they should have, which is her information and hers only.
Great. I think those were all the questions that I had on our end. So if you want to talk a little bit about coaching, and then we can
Okay.
finish off.
Yeah. So I started coaching about 3 years ago because I had taught the elder council boot camp so many times, and people would get the information and then go home. It's like, what do I do with this? I don't know how to do this. And so they were calling me, and I was spending a lot of time answering questions and doing things. And it was taking time out of my practice. And so I have now pared down my practice where I dress up and go into the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I spend Mondays and Wednesdays, ideally, doing coaching stuff. And I love to teach. I think I'm fairly good at it. People understand it when I go through it, and I just love what I do. And I love seeing new attorneys discover this amazing field of practice and really make a difference in the world, really change people's lives, preserve assets, and do things. But it's hard. The learning curve is very steep. And so what I decided was, in my off days, is I'm going to start a coaching program. I've recorded the whole Medicaid boot camp thing. It's there for you. You can watch it as many times, and it's in short little single topic videos, not a 8-hour video. It's in single topics. You can go back. It's like, okay, CSRA, what is that again? There is a video on CSRA and just on CSRA, or what's MEMNA again? How is that calculated? I do that. And then you get all of my documents in my office that I have. You get all of my slide presentations that I've developed over 25 years for attorneys, for social workers, for the public. And you get 2 1-hour phone calls with me every single month. Okay. And so that's the coaching program. We are doing a big push in August. Okay. So in August, every workday, you're going to get something from us. I'm going to do a live webinar on Wednesday. It'll be at 12, so it won't interrupt Amber's. But a webinar discussing things for that week: intro to elder law, Medicaid, estate planning, marketing. So that whole month, we're doing a big push. It's free. Email me or Trisha. So it's Trisha, Trisha, at theelderlawcoach.com. It's probably better that you email her. I get a bazillion emails. Email her, let her know that you're interested in the August push. You will get on the mailing list. You'll get all kinds of documents. You'll get quizzes. You'll get access to the live webinar that I do on Wednesday, teaching the topic, and then on Friday we do Q&A. So it's a big push. And if you do the August, we're going to let you do September for free. Okay. If you sign up, September will be free in coaching. You can see what's going on, see how it happens. And I want to make you a very competent elder law attorney and have the best job in the world. So Todd at theelderlawcoach.com, or better yet, Trisha, Trisha, at theelderlawcoach.com. Thanks,
Awesome.
Amber. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And yes, Todd, you are doing a webinar next month on the fair hearing process. So everybody look for an invitation on that in the month of July. Thank you again, Todd, and have a great day, everybody.